There once was a man from Aruba. Or wait a sec, was it actually Cuba? Went down the avenue to look for a clue, and darn, it was really Bermuda. Hey guys, James here again with another game review, this time talking about GeoGuessr. For those who haven't heard of it, GeoGuessr is basically if you took Google Maps and made it into a puzzle or trivia game. Overall, GeoGuessr is actually shockingly fun and is a great game to play with friends. But is it actually worth the price of admission? Let's take a look now. So if you've ever used Google Maps Street View function, you've essentially played GeoGuessr. In GeoGuessr, you're thrown into a street view of a random place in the world, and it's your job to guess where you are. And honestly, that's the core gameplay in a nutshell. You click up and down the street in order to try to find different context clues, and you use that to make your best educated guess to determine where you are in the world. The game ends up being a puzzle game as you try and look for whatever clues you can. This can include things like flags, street signs, stores, script, architecture, people, license plates, and maybe even going as far as fauna and flora. And I think this does make the game also feel like a trivia game where experience with different cultures and locations becomes a huge bonus. Honestly, the game is way more fun than it has any right to be. Not only is it challenging and can get surprisingly competitive, but it's also a treat to be able to travel to different locations, and some of the views are truly jaw-dropping. In order to keep things fresh, GeoGuessr offers a number of different single-player and multiplayer options. Standard mode lets you select a map of your choosing and you play through 5 locations. If you play for free, you're limited to 5 minutes of total time, which can actually be kind of fun racing the clock. If you do get GeoGuessr Pro, you actually get unlimited time. The Explorer mode lets you select a country of your choosing and you play through 5 locations in that country. I think the idea here is that you get to explore the country of your choosing and learn about the country to improve your GeoGuessr knowledge. In Streaks mode, you can choose between country and US states modes. In either, your goal is just to identify the country or state that you're in and try to develop the highest possible streak that you can. Finally, for single player, you have the Daily Challenge mode. Here you play through a set 5 locations and they give you a total score based on how close you are for each. You then compare your score against other people in the world. The only thing I'll note here is that some of these dudes are definitely cheaters. Pinpoint accuracy and in 0 seconds? Yeah, definitely cheaters. Meanwhile, there's quite an extensive offering of friendly and competitive modes as well. In the Battle Royale mode, you can play through GeoGuessr's version of a BR game. You and up to 9 other competitors or friends are placed in the same starting location. All players are given a time limit and a number of lives to guess where they are, and you compete to see who can get the closest to the actual location. Then, like any other BR game, whoever is the furthest away or incorrectly guesses is eliminated, and remaining players proceed to the next round. How the game works is a bit different depending on which mode you choose though. In the BR countries mode, you only need to correctly guess which country you're in. Any incorrect guesses will show the flag of the guess, so other players can actually use this to their advantage, assuming they can recognize the flag. Any players who run out of lives or don't guess the correct country in time are eliminated and all other players move on. The countries mode also includes some optional power-ups such as the 50-50, which narrows down the choices to 2 countries, and the spy, which allows you to see other players' guesses. Meanwhile, the distance mode is your classic GeoGuessr experience where you have to blindly guess and try to get as close as possible to the true location. Then, as everyone submits guesses, you can see the leaderboard shift depending on who is the closest. The leaderboard will also display how far your guess was from other players on the leaderboard, so if you have any sort of cartography skills, this could actually come in handy. Players are then eliminated one at a time until one is left standing. One of the big benefits of the distance mode is that it allows you to play more varied maps and it does feel more difficult. Next, you have the Bullseye Co-op mode. In this mode, you and up to 5 other friends work together to try and pinpoint the exact location you're in. This mode is actually a little bit different where you can use a radius to guess where you are, and the game will let you know whether or not your guess was in the radius or not. The smaller the circle you use though, the more points you get. You and your team then try to pinpoint the exact location with smaller and smaller circles. Next, you have duels and team duels. Duels pits you in a one-on-one where you compete to see who can get the closest guess. Each player only gets one guess, and once one person locks in, a timer starts to count down for the other player as well. Depending on how far apart the guesses are, the winner of the round will then do damage to the loser. Later rounds feature things like healing rounds, double, triple, quadruple damage, and so on. You keep going until one person is left standing. Team duels operates in the same way except it allows for 2 teams, rather than one-on-one. The best guess from each team is then pitted against each other to determine the damage done. Next, you have the City Streaks mode. In this mode, you're thrown into a major city and have to guess where you are. Unlike other modes, here you're presented a limited number of options, so this can make guessing much easier. You then try to develop the highest streak possible. Be careful though, if you use up your lives, your streak is ended. Something I found interesting about this game mode is that not every player will get the same locations in the same order, so some players might actually have a slight advantage. Finally, you have the Live Challenges mode. In this mode, every player runs through the same 5 locations. You then compare scores to see who had the best score overall. Overall, I think there's a solid number of offerings in terms of modes, and originally I was a bit disappointed that there wasn't a more continuous mode for multiplayer, for example like a BR mode but without the eliminations, but I do think the live challenges mode, which was recently added, does seem to address this. I also wish that the non-dual multiplayer modes had some music to accompany them as well. I walk a lonely road. So in terms of issues, I would say there aren't any major ones, but I think there was one main thing that I did notice at times. I feel like there is a bit of a tendency for the game to throw you into maps with a single long winding road. This can be a bit frustrating as you'll often end up clicking in one direction for a really long time, begging for any sort of clue possible. The problem with this also becomes that if you go in the wrong direction initially, you might find it extremely difficult to get a good guess in. This can be an interesting challenge, sure, but it seemed to happen far more often than I would have liked. Other than that, there can be some times where clicking along the road feels a bit slow, but I think this is just how Google Maps works. I think it can also be a bit jarring and sad when you think you find a clue, but when you click into a new view, it might change or disappear. But again, I don't think this is a huge deal and is likely the result of Google Maps. Overall though, like I mentioned before, GeoGuessr is not only a great idea for a game, but it ended up being way more fun than I would have ever expected. I'm giving GeoGuessr a 3.5 out of 4 as it really does everything it sets out to quite well. The big question is though, is it worth the price? And normally, if I think a game is great, I would have no issue shelling out full price for it, but GeoGuessr does pose an interesting situation. You can play for free, but are limited to 5-minute games every 15 minutes, and you have a very limited number of options for multiplayer. If you do want to get the full game though, you do need to pay into the service. The price is $2.99 a month if billed monthly, and $1.99 a month if you get the annual plan. So is it worth it? Honestly, that just comes down to how much you think you're going to play it. $3 for a month of play is actually a pretty good deal, honestly, and I would even say the $23.88 for the annual plan isn't bad. The only thing I don't like, obviously, is that it's a subscription model. And while I get that there's probably servers or they need to pay for Google to use the maps, I can't help but feel like I'd rather just pay for the game completely unlocked, if it was possible. It's worth noting too that you only need one person with Pro in order to invite other friends, so splitting the cost is very possible. I also believe there are some knockoff versions as well if you really are interested in the game and would rather not pay that much money, but I can't speak to how well those are done. But hey, that's just me. Have you tried GeoGuessr and what did you think of it? And of course, if you enjoyed the video, please do consider hitting that like and subscribe button to help out my channel, and as usual, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.